I do want to acknowledge one thing here, and it's an important thing. You can do all the right things. You can be critically important to the organization. That does not protect you from a mass layoff. So it doesn't mean that this stuff is unimportant. It's actually critically important, because if you are terminated, this all turns into bulking up your resume with quantifiable value that you can demonstrate and speak to very effectively. Welcome to the Nerd Journey Podcast. Our goal is to help you, the technology professional, accelerate your career progression, increase your job satisfaction, and be more effective in your existing role.
We want to bring listeners like you the career advice we wish we'd been given earlier in our careers.
I'm John White, at VJourneyman on Twitter, sharing co-host duties with Nick Cordy at NetworkNerd_.
We're two former IT operations guys who have moved on to pre-sales roles with technology vendors. We have our opinions, but we also like to highlight the journeys of others and see what we can learn from them.
We'd also like to ask for your feedback to make this a conversation, not a one-way broadcast. Email us at nerdjourneypodcast@gmail.com or DM us at nerdjourney on Twitter. So come join us on our nerd journey.
Let's take a trip.
Episode 329, Managing Your Career During Uncertain Times. Nick, I just want to start out by saying, I don't know about you, but I'm being hit pretty heavily by allergies.
Yeah.
So I am not feeling 100%.
It's the same over here. So I think we're each at 60 to 70% brain power, but we thought this topic was important enough to go ahead and get out there so it can help some people. We can only control what we do right now, and this is something we could do right now.
Absolutely.
Tech layoffs are making headlines. Economic uncertainty. It feels pretty heavy. We talked about this a little bit in episode 70, about fear and uncertainty, how to take control in uncertain times. Maybe you feel secure, but you're hearing whispers about layoffs at your company. Maybe you're actively worrying about that. Maybe you have been impacted by a layoff. We hear you. We see you. Maybe you're just trying to figure out how to recession-proof your skills. Maybe you feel stuck at your current employer because of golden handcuffs or some other reason, or you're highly specialized and don't know what to do. Wherever you happen to be, that feeling is real. And the real challenge is the risk this poses to job security and financial stability, all the things we just talked about. It feels kind of wrong that forces outside of our control can impact our careers so much, but they do.
Yeah, they absolutely do. We're not just going to sit and dwell on the problems. We know that they're out there, they're cyclical, and it doesn't help that they're cyclical. Somebody can say, hey, we're going to have down times, but we're also going to have boom times. Yeah, but right now, this might be a downtime. So the idea that there might be boom times in the future doesn't exactly help. So we just wanted to focus on a practical plan to help you regain a sense of control, actionable things that you can do to navigate this period proactively. We just wanted to again, reiterate our purpose. This is career advice we'd wish we'd had earlier in our careers. We want to help you accelerate your career progression, increase your job satisfaction, and be more effective. That is all still true, but in times when everything feels unstable, when there are layoffs going on, at your company or in your industry, I think it's okay to take a little bit more of a defensive approach to this. Again, like Nick said, it's completely rational to feel anxious, when job security and finances are threatened by layoffs, when we're entering into times of economic uncertainty. We both understand that. We both want you to know that it's okay to feel that way, right? It's a completely valid response. We're here to help you channel that energy into proactive career management. We've broken this down into 5 pillars, 5 areas where you can take action, starting right now. Pillar 1 is building financial resilience. Pillar 2 is maximizing your current job performance and visibility. Pillar 3 is executing strategic skill development. Pillar 4 is engaging in effective networking and relationship building. And Pillar 5 is managing your mindset and controlling your narrative.
So if we dive into the plan, pillar number 1 is building financial resilience. One buffer against the risk of layoffs and income instability, as well as benefit loss, is having a savings account. Knowing the real numbers of your expenses for 3 to 6 months of living. Do you know those numbers? If you don't know the numbers, this week you should calculate what the bare bones monthly expenses are for you and your household. How long could the savings you have right now actually last? We've heard budgeting tools mentioned on the show before. I think in episode 299, Kate Donovan mentioned You Need a Budget. YNAB is a really good tool to see where your money is going each month. Maybe you can decide right now on certain things that you would immediately cut if your income stream was cut unexpectedly.
Right.
And we did revisit some of these basics in episode 57 about personal finance, that having an emergency fund in a liquid savings that you can get to, and eliminating some of that high interest debt so you can have the peace of mind you need if something happens to your job.
Absolutely. I don't know about you, but I feel fairly privileged to have been in a series of jobs where I was able to build up that emergency fund.
Mm-hmm.
And the peace of mind that it brought when I was laid off with 11,000 of my closest friends at Google, it let me basically wake up, read the termination email, and go back to sleep.
That's great.
I didn't even wake up my wife to let her know. This is not great news, but we are in a financial position to survive, and it's not a problem.
One of the ways I've had success in building up savings is making it automatic. So maybe you make an automatic $50 more a month or per check if you can, even if it's a little bit, and you can increase what you're automatically saving now. That's a great thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I've talked to you about this offline. I have a completely separate savings account,
Mm-hmm.
Secondary savings account. So every time a paycheck hits, it automatically cuts off some of it to a separate savings account. So I don't generally look at that. It's just a psychological barrier to spending it. And that's very, very helpful.
Absolutely. If you can miss it, definitely save it. And hopefully it's some kind of high yield savings account where you're getting 3 or maybe 4% interest right now, not 0.03.
That's an enhancement, right? Having an emergency fund, period, in an account that's separate, period, is step 1.
Correct.
At the point where you have that, now you can go, shopping for the best place for it to land and actually earn you something on an annual basis so that it keeps on growing. But, it is a good thing to keep in mind.
And you also want to be really benefit savvy for the benefits you're getting at your employer. Do you know what the company's stance on severance is if they have layoffs? Is that in the handbook somewhere, and can you find it? What about the cost of things like COBRA in your state?
So COBRA, that's the extended health insurance that you can buy after you lose your job.
Mm-hmm. And then most states should have a 60-day warn notice if you get laid off, but then, I'd make sure to investigate that as well.
Yeah, I think that's only true if you're part of a mass layoff. So if it's a one-off, and it's just you or, 20 or 30 people, I don't think that they actually need to do that. I wouldn't count on it. But maybe understand any vesting that you might have. For example, some retirement funds have a vesting period and you might, vest into it more slowly. Or if part of your compensation package had restricted stock units, you might have a vesting schedule. It's a good time to kind of, assess all of those things. When am I fully vested into my retirement funds, and, on what schedule am I investing into any restricted stock that I might have as part of my compensation? I do want to say that we put together a guide that we'll reference, a little bit later. And in that guide, we've included an AI prompt to plug into ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or whatever it is that you use to kind of support you and help get through what can be a high stakes emotional process of actually assessing your finances.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times it's actually difficult to go through and figure out where you are, what your savings are, what, your retirement funds are, what your cost of living is right now, and what you could actually cut out in an emergency. It's really difficult to go through that process. So we built this AI prompt to kind of interview you and basically support you through the process, talk through it one point at a time. Hopefully that's helpful. And if you have any feedback on that prompt, let us know. We broke out that prompt, so it's a whole separate page that you can access and copy paste the prompt, and it even has an example conversation of how the conversation might go. Hopefully people find that helpful. Shall we move on to pillar number 2?
Let's do it.
So pillar 2 is maximizing your current job performance and visibility. One of the things that you want to keep in mind is like demonstrating that you are providing value to the organization. That's your best defense from getting let go. And visibility builds your internal leverage. It builds your credibility in the organization, even, when there aren't uncertain times. And especially when there are, you have this brand and value to the organization that hopefully is undeniable. And if somebody's, sitting there looking at a spreadsheet of people to cut, you want them to go, ooh, we can't actually cut this person because they're so important and have so much value to the organization. Let's talk through some action points on this. We actually, again, talked about this in episode 70. So you might want to go back and look at the show notes and re-listen to that episode as well. It's not just about tasks. It's about results. You want to track your accomplishments. You want to quantify the impact whenever possible. So, reduce process time by X, contributed to project delivering Y value. Use feedback loops so that, you can actually get some feedback from people about your impact in doing those things, and build that career moat, right? So how can you be valuable and adaptable? What is your unique skill combo that is helping you to bring the most value to the organization? You want to proactively make your impact known. You want to give updates to your manager, share wins and team meetings, when appropriate. Like, you don't want to be out there like boasting, but like to talk about, how you're doing these things and offer to help maybe. So document those contributions.
The documentation is the required input for you to be able to tell the story of what you're doing. If you document it, there's something in that writing process that is thinking, just like we talked about with Josh Duffney so many episodes ago, and it helps you formulate the way to say it. And you're sharing these things with your manager as you have opportunity in those one-on-one discussions. Hey, here's what I'm up to. I did this thing and it had this result. That shouldn't be the entire conversation, of course, but if you have the opportunity to share something that worked really well, share it.
Yeah, absolutely. And document it, right? Do a
Of
little
course.
write-up, maybe a one-pager, save it in a place where you can get to it, even if you lose access to company resources.
Absolutely.
Keep a copy of your accomplishments in your personal files as well as in your company files. Because as you're articulating your value, you want to be able to basically have these 1 or 2 bullet points on your private resume or your LinkedIn, with those quantified results. And you want to be able to actually explain that value. So maybe practice explaining, that key value prop or that bullet point in, 30 seconds. Give the elevator pitch for that value. Have that in your back pocket. So if somebody asks about it, you can go back and explain it.
It's really important that we understand if we are or are not delivering value to the organization. And some of the ways you're going to get feedback on that is sharing what you've done with your boss. And if they tell you it wasn't valuable, you'll know. You'll know some of those metrics by which you're measured. If you want a really good episode to go back and listen to that pairs nicely with this advice, I would say episode 284 with Jason Belk about drafting your career narrative. That's a good one.
That was a really good conversation. Yeah. I do want to acknowledge one thing here, and it's an important thing. You can do all of this very well, and you can be critically important. Does that actually insulate you? from getting terminated in a mass layoff. It does not. You can do all the right things. You can be critically important to the organization. That does not protect you from a mass layoff. So it doesn't mean that this stuff is unimportant. It's actually critically important, because if you are terminated, this all turns into bulking up your resume with quantifiable value that you can demonstrate and speak to very effectively. And you can customize a resume for an application based on whether or not they're looking for those things.
Absolutely. We ready to go to the next one?
Yeah, let's talk about pillar 3.
Pillar 3, execute strategic skill development. So we want to future-proof our careers, give ourselves longevity, and increase the optionality, whether we stay at our current company or go somewhere else. So think about key skills that you have. What is going to be resilient and valuable in the market? Maybe public cloud type skills. Do you know how to use those services or automate them with some kind of scripting language? The conceptual background of that. Concepts of cybersecurity. Some type of automation framework, whether it's CI/CD pipelining tool or scripting language like a Python, Ansible, Salt, you name it. And then some foundational awareness of AI and machine learning. Don't forget the fundamentals in all of this. And think about, as you're trying to target the key skills you want to either build new or sharpen, think about it like this. What's going to help me be better at my job right now? Is this a technology the company already uses? Okay, that's a good sign. You think they'll use it longer term? Do I need to go deeper or learn about it to make what I'm doing more valuable? And does learning this, is that growth for me as a skill? And does it have staying power if I go somewhere else? Are other companies using this technology or concept or framework that I'm learning about? So maybe I do some research on job descriptions of other companies just to check if I'm not sure. But you want that double check mark, ideally.
That's such an incredible tactic that you just suggested there. Investigate some job descriptions of positions that you might be interested in moving into. It's not like there's no job listings out there. It's just incredibly competitive. So why don't you go take a look at, job description of a position that you have right now, or something that you aspire to do, or something that is kind of, next door to what it is that you do, or something that you're interested in stretching to do. All of those job descriptions are going to have skill requirements that you might or might not have. So something that would be perfect is something that would enhance your current job and then also enhance your ability to have, a check mark for the next position that you're looking at.
100%.
I love that suggestion. Love it.
And Joseph Griffiths mentioned in episode 327 that growth can take different forms during the course of our career. So maybe growth for you is developing a technical skill. Maybe it's a particular type of communication skill that you need to get better at your job, but also move into the next one, especially if you want to go into like people management, for example. And then how do you actually execute on building this new skill or sharpening an existing skill? Well, employer training budgets, do you have that? You could use cost-effective options like a Udemy, Coursera, Pluralsight if you have to pay out of your own pocket. There are some free things on YouTube that you could do. What action could you take? What if you blocked 2 to 3 hours on your calendar each week for learning? Whether that's during work hours, it might have to be after work hours. But if you could block some time each week and be consistent about it, treat it like an important meeting that you can't miss, then that's going to build those skills over time.
I really like that suggestion. There's so many resources out there that are paid that you already mentioned. There's a bunch of free ones, right? Recently, a former colleague reminded me that Google has this thing called Cloud Skills Boost. And I'm pretty sure it's cloudskillsboost.google. And it is fairly neutral in its technology approach. Obviously there's a little bit of descriptions of things and executions in labs that involve Google Cloud technology, but that doesn't mean that it's not valuable and that it's Google only skills. It definitely is not. That's another resource that we can point people to.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that most organizations that are out there have learning resources that are
Mhm.
publicly available and free to low cost.
Yeah. What if I only have limited time to learn? How do I decide what to learn? Well, if you had a list of 3 or 4 things that you say give you the double check mark, you might need to identify which one of those you think is the most valuable to both what you do today and what would be next, or make that skill have more longevity in the market. But I might put like what you do today at slightly, maybe 60%, and then the longevity factor at 40, because you still want to be really good at what you do to continue doing it for now.
I think it also probably depends on how uncertain you feel about your position.
That's
Right.
true. Yeah.
If your organization is going through a series of like what feels like monthly or quarterly layoffs, and you're feeling very, very uncertain, then you might want to prioritize things that make you better in the job market as opposed to keeping a job which feels very, very unstable. You just have to tailor it to your situation.
And maybe think about your learning style as to whether you are somebody who likes to go super deep at the beginning, or
Mhm.
you need a broad overview first and look at the foundational concepts before you start turning knobs with this software, hardware, whatever it is.
Think about also the technology waves.
Yes.
That might be something to keep in mind. What is it that's interesting to you? What feels like hype? What feels real? And maybe investigate the things that might be the next technology wave.
I think everything we just talked about are questions that somebody could ask related to the next section that you're going to cover.
Ah, yes. Very good point. So pillar number 4, engage in effective networking and relationship building. Why would we want to do this now? Well, your network is your safety net, your information source, your opportunity engine. This is even more critical when things are shaky. There's this thing that I've seen referenced online. I don't know if it's true or not, but an epidemic, quote unquote, of AI generated resumes and AI screening tools that is leading to kind of a gridlock, which is leading to personal references being way, way more important, which is, it's always been the most important thing. An employee referral is somebody that you can actually talk to and say, how well do you know this person?
Yep.
Tell me, when you worked with them, were they using the skills that we need in this position? If so, tell me like what you saw. When you have an employee refer somebody, like that's like gold. It's very, very helpful. So those kinds of networks that you can build, even if it's an indirect referral, oh, I heard this company is hiring for that type of position. You might want to go investigate that. That's just a point of information. Sure, it's not somebody who's referring you, but then maybe you can investigate that organization, find out if you know anybody who works there.
Mm-hmm.
If not, you just do your due diligence. Like, is this a position that looks good? Does it look like I'm actually, qualified for it? And can I come up with a legitimate, resume that matches the skills and things that they're looking for? So we'll go back to points that we've made in the past about working your network. This isn't something that you really should be starting when you feel uncertain. You should be doing this consistently and continuously. But regardless of that, what are the things that you should be doing? I think we talked about this in episode 70. You need to nurture those connections, but adapt for what's going on right now. Lead with empathy. How are things going for you? How are you holding up during these times? Reach out to people and ask those questions and let them talk about how they're feeling. Offer to help or share relevant info before you're asking for anything.
Mm-hmm.
Make it, a mutual benefit type of thing. Internal networking, build bridges within your organization. One of the places that you can find work is inside the organization that let you go. They might need your skills somewhere else. And a lot of times in an economic-based layoff, they'll give you a certain amount of time to find a position within the organization. Build your network inside your organization too. Understand the challenges that are being faced by other teams, not just your team. Who are the key influencers? Who are the decision makers in the other organizations, again, within your employer that you think might be able to help you, that you might be interested in working for. Obviously, external networking, stay active. LinkedIn is super valuable here. If you're participating in online communities around your job or the technology that you use, stay engaged with those communities. Listen more than you talk. Understand what's going on. Get the lay of the land if you're just getting started. And then let's talk about a specific action. Identify 3 people in your network that you haven't spoken to recently and just reach out this month just to connect with them with empathy, as we mentioned before. Hey, how are you holding up? I know that, things are uncertain out there. How are you doing?
And combine that with pillar 3. And when you talk to these people, just ask them what they're learning about and why are they learning about it. That's not the same as saying, hey, will you refer me for this job? It's just a curiosity. And maybe you get into a discussion of, okay, how valuable is this thing I'm trying to learn? And it could be a really good chat.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives you a chance to pressure test your assumptions about the skills that you're thinking about learning.
That's right.
So you're absolutely right. You can get some opinions about the things that the conclusions that you came to when you're examining pillar 3 in your skill acquisition. This is something that I did. I went to LinkedIn. I have, 3,000 first degree connections. And, you can download your connections. They'll give you a CSV file. I uploaded it into a spreadsheet and then I just did like a random walk. Give me a random name here. I just scroll down and put my finger down and I said, do I know this person? Look them up, see how close of a connection we are. If we're reasonably close, it's somebody that I've actually met and actually had a discussion with, then I'll just reconnect with them, send them a LinkedIn message, ask them how they're doing. And I'll do that 2 or 3 more times. It's not costing you anything except time. If you do kind of a random walk through your connections, then you're bound to find, people that you're connected to, not in the exact way that you think might get you your next job or whatever, but inevitably, like they have a different viewpoint than you do about the job market, the tech community, the skills that are needed. And so you get this like diversity of thought about what's going on. So, highly encourage you to do something along those lines. People you can think of and then people at random. I can understand that any of these things can be difficult to actually take action on, Nick, though. So why don't we talk about the 5th pillar now?
Sure. Manage your mindset and control your narrative. We know that fear can cause us to be paralyzed and to make bad decisions. So what we want to have is a proactive mindset that empowers us. It's okay to feel fear, but we want to consciously shift our focus to the controllable things we talked about in pillars 1 through 4. The way to combat paralysis and inaction is taking an action. If you feel overwhelmed, you could break something that feels like a big task into really small tasks. So if your task that you need to do is update your resume, what's the smallest possible step there? Maybe it's update the job title you had for your last role. Could you schedule 15 minutes today to do just that one thing? Then you've done something. You've taken a step in a direction. You've made some progress that you can celebrate. It may not be the most progress ever, but it's something. And you weren't just sitting there all clenched up in your body and just super fearful.
Well, this goes back to one of the things that we've often discussed, and that is small incremental gains over time.
Yes.
It's always overwhelming to consider like this mountainous task that you have to do. Completely overhaul my LinkedIn, completely reboot my blog, completely update my resume. Those things might be too big to hold in your head and actually take action on. So that small incremental thing, that's incredibly powerful.
100%. That goes back to the book discussion episodes we had with Jason Gass on Finish, using data to celebrate your imperfect progress. That's a good series and a good book. Maybe during this time of uncertainty, you could channel that nervous or fearful energy into something else by reframing your perspective. Could this push you into learning something new that you put on the back burner? Maybe could it lead to a role that's a better fit for you? You know, if you've got nervous energy or anxious energy that you need to get out and it's hard to go to sleep at night, maybe you work on something that's just fun to learn something for an hour when you can't sleep. And maybe that accomplishment will then make you tired and let your mind rest a little bit.
Yeah.
or read a book to learn something, for example.
I joked about rebooting your blog, and I actually did that. Now that I think about it, it's something that I actually did. I was like, oh man, my V Journeyman blog is something that I haven't revisited in ages. I'm not even sure that the WordPress site was up, to be honest, right?
Uh-oh.
So I was like, okay, how do I address this? I broke it down into small pieces, got it back up and running. I even changed how I was hosting it.
Yeah, that's a big deal. You moved it to a different format and hosting setup.
I changed it to like a static site instead of a WordPress site. I mean, I still do the content management with WordPress, but I deployed it using a static site generator. And it was a fun little thing. And it got me, energized to maybe write again. So I'm working on that too.
What you've just described is a much larger endeavor than I'm just going to write one blog in the next month.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
just going to redo my whole site and write some blogs.
Yep. Change the theme, update the engine, and change how it's delivered.
But to your point, it's amazing how the energy can shift when you do something like that. I've taken breaks to work on podcast stuff just to flip the script and change my energy for a little bit, and I notice a difference.
Oh, yeah.
In a positive
Absolutely.
way.
This is totally anecdotal, but it did re-energize me. I took like a couple hours across 2 nights, got it up and running, and it kind of changed my energy to my day-to-day work. And it carried through to the actual blogging. I got an article written. We've mentioned using AI prompts. Like I wrote an article about how to do effective AI prompting, and now I'm ready to publish it. So it's, one of 5 different article ideas that I had. So it really did help a lot. Maybe I didn't say this up front, but both of us fall into this category of like, hey, we've seen people get let go all around us.
Yeah, who were brilliant.
We have friends that have been fired from their positions in the last 6 months and the last 3 months. So, we're not immune to this. And I feel like this was like a small positive step that I was taking to, re-energize myself and re-empower myself.
Well, and something you're also modeling for us, John, is a theme of proof of work. So we talked about learning something new in Pillar 3. If you're learning something new, can you blog about it? Can you put your scripting on GitHub? Could you make a video about it? Could you put something out there that you can reference so that people know what you're learning and how you think? That's one way to own your story, control that narrative, and show what you're doing, learning in public. So how have I been resilient, adaptable, and been taking proactive steps? Well, I taught myself how to do this new thing. In John's case, a whole new type of blog site, in addition to writing blogs on a topic that he hasn't really written about before.
Exactly.
And I will say, just for myself, when the task list gets long, it's hard to decide what you should do next. Which one of these should I do? And, hopefully you can filter it down to what's the most valuable for what my job is. Sometimes you just need to pick something and do it, and you'll feel better.
That's super important. Don't spend your energy figuring out which thing to do. Just do something.
Yeah.
Do one of the things this is top 5 in importance probably, right? Okay, so do it. Is it worth figuring out which is like, number 1 versus number 2 versus number 3 when you have a list of like 20 or 30 things that you need to do? Well, if it's top 5, it's probably important enough to do. And if somebody needs to, reprioritize your tasks for you by telling you something else is an emergency, then you'll probably hear from them.
Most likely.
You won't need to like spend an hour agonizing over like what's number 1, what's number 2, what's number 3. Somebody will call you up and say, hey, we need this. This should be your number 1.
Yes, 100%.
Avoid that analysis paralysis.
I think you created an AI prompt on managing our mindset, right, John? Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was yet another thing, again, that's kind of an outcome from my poking around with generative AI. The tool that I happen to use is Google Gemini, but really that shouldn't matter. It's whatever you are comfortable using. And it's a prompt. The link is in the uncertainty guide. You can copy paste the prompt into whatever tool that you want. And the whole idea is for it to instruct the AI to act as a helper and motivator for you to take control over your narrative and unfreeze you, to kind of interact with you, to brainstorm about what are the most important things and what are the things that you could do to take a positive step forward. Maybe create a checklist for you, as you're kind of brainstorming with the AI. It keeps all that context. And then one of the things you can do at the end is say, okay, yeah, all the things that I talked about, help me prioritize them, and then create a checklist. And then boom, you have your output. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just something is better than nothing. And a tool that helps you get unfrozen is better than being frozen. It's a whole document. It's a whole page unto itself, and it will have like a model of what that process might look like. Of course, your interaction with an AI is going to be, custom to you, because you're going to, have your answers as opposed to kind of some of the answers that were modeled there. But that's why it's valuable. Otherwise, you just read the document and say, okay, that's my output. Well, it's not, because it's not your mindset and what you're facing. Again, we'd love feedback on that. You reach out to me or Nick on LinkedIn and let us know whether any of these AI prompts are helping.
We talked about some action steps within the pillars, but let's formalize our call to action.
So we talked about the 5-pillar plan. It's a lot to take in. So we wanted to make it easier to get started. So here's your 1% action challenge after listening to all this. It's simple. Go to nerd-journey.com and download the free Career Uncertainty Action Guide. Remember, we already have a layoff guide at nerd-journey.com/layoff resources. So this guide is at nerd-journey.com/uncertainty guide. We've consolidated the key actions from this discussion that we've had on the podcast today, including specific checklists tailored to whether you're employed but uncertain or recently laid off. It includes prompts to assess your career moat, links back to episode 57 on finance and episode 70 on core actions, ideas for sharing resources, and ways to connect with a community. Everything all in one place. So find the link in the show notes for the episode on nerd-journey.com/uncertainty guide, or go to the site, nerd-journey.com. It'll be either in the header or in a page navigation along the left or right side. And of course, if you find this valuable, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with a colleague. We're not selling a newsletter. We're not selling any training. This is all just about helping people. If you can help us help people, we'd really appreciate that.
So we believe that you can influence your career path even when the waters are choppy. You can't control everything, but you can control what you do. So what will you do?
Such a powerful question. So quick recap. Remember the 5 pillars: financial resilience, performance and visibility, strategic skills, networking, and mindset. And grab that Career Uncertainty Action Guide at nerd-journey.com/uncertainty guide.
Hang in there, listeners. Contact us if we can help.
Absolutely. We're here.
Until next time.
Farewell, listeners. Tune in next time as the journey continues. I'm John White at BJourneyman, for Nick Cordy at NetworkNerd_, signing off.
Adios.